episode, they help each other fight a new monster from across the county. But it's way too scary for most kids.
If we're gonna defeat him this time, we're gonna need to harness the full potential of our shared powers.
Sometimes the pink opaque feels more real than real life.
Maddie, it was the TV show.
Are you sure that's all it was?
I saw the TV glow. Is it a movie about being trans? Is it a movie about nostalgia? About memory? And about how memory is unreliable? And about how we form our identities around the stories we tell ourselves through our memories, through the things that happen, through the fantasies we consume? And where is the line between reality and fiction, between our memories and the fantasies that make us who we are? Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Movie Mindsets. My name is Peter Pasillas, also known as Susan Fonzarelli. I am here with my good friend and co-host for me for this episode. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Of course, amigo. My name is Casey, also known as Nothing. I'm a nobody. And I'm here to help record a movie podcast.
We saw the movie, I saw the TV glow. We both saw it. I just recently rewatched it for the second time, so I've seen this movie twice. Casey, you watched this about 2 weeks ago?
Mm-hmm, that's correct.
So who better to start us off with their first impressions than you? Why don't you go ahead and tell us what you think about this movie?
Well, before I start, I want to set things straight, which I'm not. I am a non-binary, polysexual, and this movie's themes...
Real quick. I'm so sorry. I don't mean to cut you off. Real quick. Let's do a quick trailer kind of synopsis. So what's the movie about? Just give me broad strokes.
A guy goes through his life and his friendship with a particular woman, and along the way you discover that life is not what it seems to be.
Right, and there's also this connection. So a young boy and a girl, they become friends at their school, and they connect through the TV show The Pink Opaque, right? Mm-hmm. Talk about The Pink Opaque for us.
The Pink Opaque, to me, is almost symbolized...
No,
The Pink Opaque is... Honestly, I love the style.
It's a TV show.
It's a TV show.
It's kind of like Buffy the Vampire Slayer meets Charmed. It kind of... These two outsiders...
It's Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It's more kids than teens.
Yeah, and these two outsiders, this young black kid and this lesbian female, they become friends because of their outsider status and because of their shared affinity for the TV show The Pink Opaque. So the whole film revolves around this TV show, right?
Oh, definitely. It's one of the main central pillars of the movie.
Right. And so that's the general synopsis. That's basically what the film's about. It's about these two people whose lives changes because of their friendship and because of this TV show. So, Casey, why don't you give us your first impressions now that we know what the movie's about?
I loved the movie for the themes it had, less so for an actual movie. In terms of the fact that, the first it hit home connectively, emotionally, but as a movie, the first half is great. And I think we'll discuss that further along the podcast, is how good that first half is. But as it goes along, I don't say it loses you, but you have to be on its wavelengths for sure.
Right. The first time I saw this movie, I thought it was boring, and I thought at best it was an ambitious failure. I could understand that it was very artistic and there was a lot of symbolism and there was a lot of creativity involved, but I really couldn't get myself to enjoy it. I couldn't get myself to appreciate it. And I was thinking about this movie, and one of the things I kept coming back to that I did enjoy was in the first half of the film, as you were talking about, which was the sort of whole concept of nostalgia and remembering and idolizing the past. Although I don't say they idolize the past, but they certainly... The movie is about remembering your past and about your memories and the memories that made you. And that connects with, the nostalgia that they share, not only for the TV show, but for the memories and everything. And so on my second viewing of watching this, I was really focusing on that. And I realized, so let's now get into scene for scene. Now that I've just did that horrible, very boring preamble. The movie begins with a young black child who is at a school function, and he meets the co-star of the show. He meets the woman, Maddie. That's her character's name. She's played by the actress from Atypical, and they meet. And I'm sorry. Before that, let's go back to the beginning. The very beginning of the movie begins with him watching TV and finding the show The Pink Opaque. Do you remember the trailer, the little preview?
Oh yeah, him will find.
There's a trailer for it, and then that's like the intro scene, and then we have the scene where he is at school at some after-school function with his mom. The mom has all of 3 lines in the movie. She dies. She dies of
off-screen-itis.
Yeah, off-screen-itis, and so then the young black kid, he meets an outsider girl who's there for her photography. She's using the photo room where they make the photos, where it's all red, the red room or whatever it's called, and they both find out that they like the same TV show. So the little boy has to lie to his mother, and he says that he's going to go to a sleepover to a friend's house, but in actuality, he's going to sneak off and he's going to watch this movie with this girl and her friend, and he has a pink sleeping bag. Now, what do you think about the symbolism of the pink? Was it too on the nose? Was it too on the head?
Can I say some visual symbolism?
Before we get into the symbolism, just so the viewers understand, in the show, when he goes to the sleepover to go watch The Pink Opaque, which he's not allowed to watch at home, he has to watch it at the girl's house, but he can't say that he's going to have a sleepover at a girl's house, so he pretends that he's going to another friend's, but he's not. But the whole time he has a pink sleeping bag. And if you watch the movie, and if you've ever heard anybody talk about it, then you know that this movie is heavily involved with trans identity, and the director was inspired by their transformation. So the pink sleeping bag. Too obvious or not obvious enough? What do you think?
I think it's one of those things where it's just right amount of obvious, because for the first half of the movie, there's hints about it, but it's not too bludgeoning in the head. It's sprinkled throughout, and that's one of the first instances. And a good point to counterbalance, and I'll bring that up later.
No, what was it you were talking about?
Well, at one point, he's talking to his mom, and there's a few scenes she's in, and he's eating blue cotton candy, and he's spitting on it, dissolving the blue. And what is blue often associated with? Male. He's almost dissolving the male part of him, little by little, subconsciously, not even knowing what he's doing.
Yeah.
And that's symbolic of the
trans. All right. We'll get to the mom scene in a bit, because we got to go beat for beat. So, yeah. The pink sleeping bag, he shows up, and it's these 2 young teenagers, and they're talking about boys, and they're watching this girl, like a show that would be like for like kind of directed more towards women, but there's this supernatural element. And I'll just say for the movie's credit, the effects in the Pink Opaque show, I keep calling the movie The Pink Opaque.
It's just easier
because I forget that the movie's actually called I Saw the TV Glow, and I think it's because I like The Pink Opaque more than I like the movie I Saw the TV Glow. I kind of wish I could know more about The Pink Opaque. I kind of wish they would turn that into a show, because that was where things were really interesting, and that's where the creativity of the director and everyone else involved, that's where it really shines in this sort of surreal kind of world. And it honestly, it feels like to me it breaks the cardinal sin of having a better movie in your movie. Like The Pink Opaque is much better than I Saw the TV Glow, because it's just a more fantastical, more creative world than the symbolic ridden kind of sentimental, very melancholy reality that the movie takes place in, which may be more accurate to what the director was feeling in their everyday life, but it doesn't really make for interesting film. And I don't know if I mentioned this, but ultimately The first time I watched the movie, I like I said, I thought it was really boring. The second time I watched the movie, I think it's interesting and I think it's more creative than I gave it credit for. But is this a good movie? We'll get to that later, but that's where I was left on the second viewing, is with that question. You were saying.
Definitely make some bold, creative decisions in which I appreciate the boldness of it, but it's like when you knock away a formula, we have formulas for a reason, they work. So if you go against formula, on one hand it's really creative, but it leaves you pondering, was that really worth going against the grain? And we'll get to that later on as we discuss the movie.
Yeah, so they watch the TV show, and he's in his pink sleeping bag. He gets up the next day. He walks back to where his friend was, I guess. I'm not really sure how, like, the logistics of him getting picked up. They don't really explain it in the movie. And then I think it jumps 2 years after that.
Yeah.
I just watched this movie, so maybe it's not the most memorable because I'm already kind of scratching my head like, wait a minute, what happened again?
It's more about how the characters make you feel and the conversations they have, more about the plot.
Yeah, so we cut forward 2 years. He's now 16. We start off when he's 14. And he's 16, and his mom gets, like, some type of cancer, and she's like, you know, these are the first line. This is, like, the third line she has, so she's like, I'm dying, and then, you know, I think it also has something to do with autism, because he seems like he's on the spectrum a little bit. He kind of, the character who's in the bulk of the movie, which is not the 14-year-old, the 14-year-old is played by a child actor, and then when they jump 2 years, it's played by the actor throughout the entire movie. I don't remember his name. Let me look it up while I'm still talking. But
because I do like him as an actor. He's known for several projects. He has a good look to him.
Justice Smith. Yeah, he's so Justice Smith is throughout the entire movie, and he plays the role as really kind of a little. I don't know. He comes off to me as like a little autistic. He doesn't really. He kind of talks like Michael Cera. He's like, my mom died of cancer. Hey, Mom, can I wake up and watch the Pink and Pink? Like, he has, like, this, like, really, like, kind of monotone, kind of like, so I don't know. That's just what he sounds like to me.
As a character, though, it shows how, like, he's not really willing to fight for what he wants. He's really low energy. And it fits into the overall story. Like,
okay, if I didn't make this clear enough, after the scene, after they watch the movie, it cuts to him I forgot to mention, he's at the fair, because you mentioned the cotton candy. He goes to the fair. That's where his mom is, and I guess that's where his mom decided to tell him that she has cancer or whatever. They're talking about it, and then, yes, he has the cotton candy. He has blue cotton candy, and he spits on it. It dissolves. Maybe a symbolism, maybe not. This movie is oops, all symbolism, because everything in this movie is about everything
that is
else.
a great way to describe it. It's who needs a plot? We need more symbolism all the time. So
as the movie goes on, he stops talking to the girl who, again, is played by the actor from Atypical. She plays the big sister in Atypical. And in this one, she's like a alt lesbian, kind of. Like, it's the 90s. It takes place in 97.
Oh, she's definitely a lesbian.
She's like a lesbian. But you couldn't be a lesbian in the 90s because it was illegal. So, like, she just had to get into, like, alternative rock or something. She has a real tomboy look to her. And they don't talk very much. And then I think they meet one time on the bleachers, and that's when you find out that she's a lesbian. Oh, wait, no, that comes later. But she starts to leave videos for him to find. She'll record the show because she knows that he's not allowed to watch it because his parents are strict, and also because, you know, it's the 90s and boys weren't allowed to watch things like that. And it's illegal.
And in a very interesting scene, as he's picking up the tape, if I remember right, a bunch of text appears on the screen.
Right, yeah.
Like it's a TV show.
Right, it gets very, like, fantastical, because the lesbian kind of friend leaves VHS tapes for him to find, because he can't speak to her. He's, like, shy. He's like, I never really spoke to her after our sleepover. And after that, she just left me videotapes. And then, so he gets to watch all the episodes in private, and, you know, he's at home and he's watching them, and then they talk on the bleachers.
As far as symbolism goes, he has to hide his love for this show from his parents.
And
if it wasn't obvious enough, it's a metaphor for being gay.
Right, and also trans, and there's There's going to be a motif later on in the movie we can talk about being buried, about burying oneself, about burying one's true self and everything. But right now we're just trying to go beat for beat for the... So in the next scene of the movie, they meet at the bleachers. He finally works up the courage to talk to her. And that's when you really find out if you had any doubts, not that there wasn't any, but if you had any doubts, yes, the female star is the lesbian. She's like, I tried to touch my friend's boob, but it wasn't real. I'm like, it was real. You sexually assaulted. There's sexual assault, mild sexual assault.
But what she was really hot.
From a lesbian, but she was asking for it, folks. She was asking for it. And
she lit on.
But anyway... It's fine. It all worked out. So, the main character, whose name I think is, I want to say it's Owen. His name is...
I think it is Owen.
Owen. So, Owen, they go and watch the Pink Opaque again. They haven't watched it in years. They've only talked to each other indirectly through the VHSs, through this TV show that they love, and... They sit down and then they watch them, and then they watch another show, and then that's when the lesbian friend, her name is Maddie, that's when Maddie is like, let's run away, and then he's like, no, and then so she's like, I want to run away, just come back tomorrow and meet up, and we're gonna get the fuck out of here. And this is where it becomes clear in the movie to me after the second viewing that from the beginning of the film, this is like the first clue after rewatching it. First time you watch it, you have no idea what's going on and you're bored and confused. At least that's how I was. But the second time I watched it and I kept this theme of nostalgia, I realized that this is not... Like, everything in the movie that's happening is something that the main character, Owen, is just recollecting. This is all just memory.
There's also an overarching frame of him at a campfire that he set up.
Right.
He's remembering the movie.
But that's also him remembering. This whole... Like, that's the thing is, like... There's no time and place. Like the first, okay, yes. In the movie, it will cut away from what's going on in the movie to Owen sitting at a campfire, talking to the audience, saying stuff. That is, I believe, supposed to represent his conscious, narrating the event. He is talking to himself, essentially. It's sort of like how you talk to yourself, how you remember things, You tell yourself what has meaning in a story. You say, when I was this young, I found this very important thing, and, that forms your identity. So the whole movie, from the very beginning, even when he's a kid, it's him remembering the event in his life that made him who he is. And this is the part of the movie. So this is where the second half to me officially begins, is when we cut into his early... He decides not to run away with the girl. He's going to go, but then he runs away and goes to his friend's house, who he's been using as a cover, saying that, hey, I'm going to stay at my my guy friend's house, not sleep over at a girl's house and watch a girl's show.
In a pink
sleeping bag. So he breaks down, he runs to his old friend's house, he bangs on the door, the mom opens the door, and he's like, I'll tell you everything. I'm sorry. And then he starts crying, and he's like, I was going to run away, but then I got scared, and I don't want to go, and I just don't want to. And so, the mom is like, I haven't seen you in, years. Because, that's the thing, is that he's actually not friends with this person anymore. He hasn't spoken to them in years. He's just, I guess he didn't make a lot of friends, and this was maybe one of the only friends he had, and so this was the only cover, as he could be like, yeah, I'm gonna go to this guy's house, but they haven't seen each other, so it's very strange probably for the mom to see this crying black kid at your house they haven't seen in years, and he's like, I was gonna run away, but then I'm not, and it's like, what?
How about you just run away? And
it was a white woman, and this is where it really gets fantastical, because she didn't immediately call the police, so that's how you know this is a fiction. Sir, I'm calling the police. Hello, officer. There's a scared black child at my house. I'd like him shot immediately.
He tried to start as the cops. I'm just trying to find my friend and shoot him on the spot.
Can you please shoot him? Ah!
And that's what the credits roll.
Yeah. No, it doesn't happen that way. Probably wouldn't happen like that in real life. Doesn't matter. A white woman made this movie. A white person made this movie. Whoops. Hey, yeah, I got 50-50 on that one, I think. I either got it wrong or I misgendered somebody. Either way, it doesn't matter. We're not going to cut it out.
But she is white.
But as a white person made this movie. But anyway, so this is where the first half of the movie to me ends. His friend Maddie runs away, and there's like police tape, and there's all this stuff. And this is
what's the one thing that's left from her?
The television.
A burning TV with a shadowed screen. And what does that mean?
That is a good question. Truly, honestly, I have no idea outside of the barrier between, again, it's the barrier between fiction and reality. The television is the portal for which they consume media that affects them. I forgot to mention this.
That's an interesting view.
Right,
For me,
yeah.
In the trans community, we have a term called the cracked egg. When the person realizes it's still trans, it's called the egg pretty much cracks. So you see the shell and grow as a person. And in this movie, the TV symbolized the cracked egg. It's literally a cracked shell. But instead of an egg, it's the TV that's cracked. And it's symbolizing Maddie becoming trans. Because as you see later in the movie, she's a different person after this. When Owen tries to call Maddie, she says, "Don't use that name." Essentially dead naming, which we'll get to that, of course. But yeah, this is hugely, at least in my opinion, a cracked egg symbol. Beautifully done.
Right. Cracked egg. She leaves. The TV is broken. The character Maddie has essentially, that's what her name in IMDb is. I'm calling her. Essentially, Maddie has broken the barrier between fiction and reality, between their world and the pink opaque, between who she is and who she essentially is born to be, which is something special. And that's, I forgot to mention this, and this is something that the movie comments on, which is art and the art that affects us and how we can be drawn to tears even by this own universe's logic or rules. A TV show that, is made for children.
I have to imagine that this creator, I kind of have proof of this, what I'm saying, was a huge fan of Sailor Moon.
Yeah.
And I felt like that show affected her greatly.
And that's what's interesting is how, like, we can be sometimes like a cartoon or an action movie or something that doesn't have like high prestige. Like, it's not always Citizen Kane that can move us to tears. Sometimes it can be the Power Rangers. Sometimes it can be Guardians of the Galaxy when you see, Rocket Raccoon lose his only family in the third one, or when Peter Quill in the first one learns how to get his groove back or whatever, so it's sort of this weird, and that's the whole movie, is it's about nostalgia, memory, and about what makes us who we are. Not only the memories and the decisions we make, but also the art that we consume, and how the art that we enjoy and that we digest and that we become obsessed with not only affects us, but it reflects us in a way. It affects and reflects. That's why they rhyme, folks.
And it shows who you are as a person. Like, his dad tried to make fun of him. What are you watching this goalie sci-fi show for? But
I didn't know that was the dad. So yes, earlier in the movie, we have to get back to the plot synopsis, but earlier in the movie when they get back from the fair and they're driving home, I thought they were in the back because they were in a taxi. And I thought that was just some taxi driver, some very opinionated taxi driver who clearly didn't want to tip. But yeah, apparently that's the dad. So yeah, the son is like, "Mom, since you have cancer, can I watch the Pink Opaque?" And she's like, "No." And then the dad's like, "That's a show for bitches." And then the son's like, "Okay." And then that's it. That's the end of the. And then like the mom dies off screen. He's like, "My mom died. It sucks.
so sad.
Whatever." Yeah, he doesn't really seem affected by his mom. He may have killed his mom. We don't know. It doesn't really explain it. I like to think he did. I like to think he strangled her in her sleep and then try to blame the dad, but because the dad's white, he got away with it. And they're like, "Well, your wife was black and you're white, so we're just gonna call no harm, no foul."
Yep. You see, you wanted to wear his mom's clothes, so you had to kill him.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a hard rule or not, but that's just what I like to think, because I like to live in a very humorous side of life. But jokes aside, getting back to the movie, so we finished the first half of the movie. The second half of the movie cuts to him in his 20s. He now works at a movie theater. His friend Maddie is gone. She left. She ran away. The police tried to look for her. They didn't find her. So she's gone. Now, before I continue, I just want to say I believe at this point in the movie, everything that happens isn't real. Like everything up to this point is sort of is his version of history, is sort of how he remembers it. And I think this second half becomes more of the fantasy. And again, it's about blurring the boundaries. I believe one of the themes is blurring the boundaries between what is real and what is fiction, what is art and what is actually in reality, and even how, when thinking back on our memories, how it's ultimately affected by the things that influence us, including the art and the values and the media that we consume. So with that said, he's in his 20s. He's a loser, kind of like everybody in their 20s. He works at a movie theater. This is where good comedian Connor O'Malley shows up. He's getting his dick sucked.
MVP is a movie.
Yeah. The guy opens the door at the manager office, and Connor O'Malley, I guess, is the manager, and he's getting his dick sucked, and it's like a joke. It's like a workplace joke. Connor O'Malley's like, "What the hell, dude? I'm just getting my dick sucked." And then he starts laughing, and then, I don't know his name is Owen, but you can just, if you haven't seen the movie, just imagine like a fucking, what's his name? You just imagine Black Michael Cera. So he's just like, "Oh, sorry, I didn't know.
I think that might be.
Geez, I'm sorry."
I might be clutching at straws here, but if the symbolism of the movie
Clutching straws,
partially
we're only at 30 minutes.
is being in the closet. When you're in the closet, you're sexually frustrated because you can't be with the person you want. You can't be with the gender you want. And so you can't really be sexually pleasured. And so him having a blowjob and him walking in on it shows that symbolically he wants that sex, but he's not getting it. He almost wants to be the goal in a way, but he can't.
That's the funny thing about the movie, is that I think, and this has something to do with, like, this is why I think he might be a little on the spectrum too, because he doesn't seem to have any sexual desires. In fact, after rewatching the movie recently, earlier in the movie, when they're still in high school in the first half, Maddie asks him, "Are you into girls?" And he says, "I don't know. I like TV shows." So he's a little asexual in that. And so when it comes to sexual, this is for a movie about trans and genders, it's not a very sexual film. Maybe good because there's, it's about teenagers, although the girl who plays Maddie is like in her 20s. So, it wouldn't be real child porn if they got naked and fucked, but, just to see what it felt like.
Hey, that didn't stop Stephen King from writing that one scene.
Yeah,
stop asking him about it. He's annoying.
Speaking of blurring the boundaries, where does the blur? Where is art and child pornography begin? This movie has nothing to do with that, but I just thought it'd be funny if I brought that up now. Anyway, the point is he's not sexual. He's not a sexual guy.
Honestly, I forgot about the aspect. You're right in the sense that maybe this scene shows that he's just not into sex.
Yeah,
him looking at it didn't even turn him on. He's just like,
he's not into sex. And honestly, you do see it from that viewpoint. Like, you're getting your dick sucked. Normally, getting your dick sucked is awesome, but like it really, when it's shot at that wide angle and like it just looks weird and it's kind of like embarrassing and everything. So yeah, it could honestly be like some form of asexuality or just not being not feeling anything, it's just because that viewpoint was very like, it was very comedic, and having Connor O'Malley, who's a very funny comedian, do that, it makes it less sexual. Anyway, so he's at his lunch break. This is where the movie begins to sort of take on also a kind of superficial kind of quality. For whatever reason, there are shopping carts outside of the movie theater, inexplicably. So if you look at the movie as this being a reflection, as this being him remembering his past and his consciousness telling him his life story and his own identity, because we do that. We tell ourselves who we are probably every day. We are reminded of the stories that make us, of the enemies and the heroes and the villains in our own lives. But
even the stories we like to forget, we still remember.
Right. And so when you begin to look at this movie with shopping carts for no reason in the front of a movie theater, you sort of begin, this is sort of where the memories begin to warp, just like in real life, how your memories warp and they change, and you don't really remember people's faces, or you remember things differently, or you thought that this thing was on this side, but it was actually on the other side. The sort of unreliability of memory, and how memory becomes fantasy. It becomes the legends we tell of ourselves. It becomes our own mythos.
I'm sure we have a couple of memories we think are true, but ultimately all this false.
Or maybe false, and maybe the memories are true and they've guided us in a way. I mean, how many times have you heard that in some way or another, that after this happened my life changed, or blah blah blah? None of that's actually real. Like, it's all just the mythos you tell yourself, and you've remembered it in such a way for so long that who's to say that you actually even remember it correctly? And memory is going to come up later. So in the second half of the movie, things kind of begin to go a little bit awry. Things kind of become a little kind of David Lynch or Steven Lynch, whatever the fuck his name is. It becomes all, Mulholland Drive-y, Eraserhead kind of, plays with your senses of reality. Connor O'Malley makes fun of Black Michael Cera, the main character, Owen. He's like, dude, like, I could get you want to get your dick sucked by that chick who was sucking my dick? And they're eating lunch in a weird place, and that's also what kind of makes me think about how this is like him remembering how things are happening, than as opposed to like actually how they are, because like they're like eating lunch in a hallway, and it's like, why aren't you in a break room or something?
You're right. I didn't notice that.
It's kind of weird, and it feels kind of like it's like a half memory. It's like, to me, I look at it as like he can only remember the insults and the encounters and the people and the tables and the break room, and it's even kind of dimly lit. It's like even the lights, the memory, it's fading. But the important parts are still there, which is him being ridiculed and mocked at work for not being like everybody else, and that's where it really feels more like an autistic kind of story, or a neurologically atypical story. As someone, not being able to communicate with the fellas in a way that everybody else does.
This is a movie,
and also Connor O'Malley's like, dude, will you just look at me? Which is something like autistic people can't make eye contact, and so this is kind of where you sort of begin to see him really become an outsider in the world, because he makes the choice. It's really a story also about failure and about regret and about memory, and that's where it all comes from, because he chooses not to go with Maddie. He chooses not to run away with his friend. And now she's gone, and I don't believe she ever comes back. I believe that she left when they were kids, and she never came back, and everything. So after that, Owen reunites with Maddie. He just runs into her at a grocery store out of nowhere, and it's like she's waiting for him. So that to me comes off as really being fake. That to me comes off as him changing the memory. He goes to a grocery store, and at first it's mundane, and then there's this still shot where it holds on him. And then to me, that's him creating the fantasy of like, what if my old friend who's like the only person in my life who I could ever admit to being trans, what if they just walked back into my life? And sure enough, they do. And the movie becomes, you can either look at these as continuity errors, or you can look at these as purposeful. I believe they're purposefully put in there to show how, as he's remembering and as he's fantasizing and imagining a world where Maddie does come back into his life, things begin to change and they become unreliable. So Maddie just appears out of nowhere at the grocery store, like she knew he was going to be there, like she was waiting for him. They reunite and they go to the goth bar. But before that, they are walking, and Maddie says a line, very monotone. She's like, we can't talk here. We'll go to a place where it's safe. And then she's walking and he's behind him, and it feels so weird. And she says it's so monotone, and it's so out of character for this actor who I know can be a natural actor. I've seen her in Atypical. She'd act. This is like the one time where she's like, okay, I'm going to talk like, she almost talks like him. And so it's, to me, that means it's him saying the lines as her in his head. He's like, imagine if I went to this grocery store and I ran into my old friend who ran away, and they go to this bar and tell us about the bar scene.
The ball scene is almost like a safe place. It's like this cool punk. They don't directly tell you it's like a gay ball. You almost get the feeling, that's the way it's lit. It's almost like a gay ball. And one of the interesting parts to me...
Just to add in what you're saying, good point, is, they say, we'll go someplace where it's safe, and they go to a gay bar. So, again, it ties back into trans, identity, LGBTQ.
I'm going to ask you this because you've seen it twice. How do you feel about the way the songs play in the ball? Because they stay on the singles for a good minute or two.
Yeah, I want to get to that, but before we get to that, I want to say, in the movie, when they first meet in the grocery store, Maddie has a jean jacket. They go to the bar, she has a leather jacket. This, to me, ties into the idea that the memory is warping and changing, and he's turning memory into fantasy. It's sort of kind of like how when you regret something, you'll sometimes relive the memory in your head, but you'll change it and you'll be like, man, if I had done this, if I had said this really cool, funny thing when that guy laughed at my shoes, oh, it would have been the best. And you're like living in that alternative reality where you were as witty or you were as brave as you should have been in that moment instead of failing. It's sort of taking a memory and reimagining it as a success instead of a failure. But yeah, she goes to this bar and her jacket changes, and then we fixate on these songs. And the first song is played by this dime piece, like, woo! Super fine. I'm a straight man, by the way, in case you couldn't.
Hey, I like them all. She was a hoochie mama.
I'm a dog, baby, you know what I mean? Woo, woo, woo. You know, I'm trying to get me some. Woo! Anyway, so there's this hot goth babe singing one of the dumbest songs I've ever heard. And the second time watching it, it got me thinking about determinism and the idea of if we truly are in control of our fate. And I was looking at this, because I'm 30 now, and I'm ready to die. I'm ready to retire and die. I'm probably too young still, even at 30, to think that way. But that's how I feel. And this woman...
We live in the ghetto, okay?
Yeah, this woman, she's young. She's goth. She's singing this okay song. One of the lines that sticks out, which again is out of place for the rest of the song, is she says, she's singing, she's like, I'm goth and I'm a 13-year-old boy, actually. And that's one of the lines, literally. It's like, I'm a 13-year-old boy. And then she starts singing this, like, you know, whatever goth song. If you like goth music, you'd like that. But it got me thinking about art and about how when you're young and you make art and you're beautiful, and it's sort of funny how temporary art is and how temporary your beauty is and how you should celebrate your youth and your beauty. And that's something, it actually made me think about, speaking about regret, I mean, it made me think about my life and about how maybe I should have done different things when I was younger, been more bold, kind of like the main character in a way. Maybe that's why I wanted to rewatch this movie, is because on some level I do connect with the character. A character whose life is essentially ruined by fear and the inability to act.
Because this character doesn't rise to the call of action, to the rise of
right,
action.
yeah, it kind of is a sort of reverse movie in that sense.
And that's what I mean when I say bold choices in terms of filmmaking, because most movies you want to see the character eventually rise up and do this thing that makes them great, who actually lives their life the way they should. But the theme of this movie is no. What if the main director never turned trans? What if they had to live with that, as you say, regret their whole life? And this movie is a symbolic of that.
Yeah. And I was thinking about how would this woman have the same personality, have the same goth personality she has if she wasn't a gorgeous woman in your young 20s? Like, doesn't this really show like the fakeness and the romanticism that we can sometimes have when we're younger? Because I started, and then, like, as a joke, because I like to be funny and mean, I thought it would be really funny if, like, instead of being a hot young woman, she was just like a, fat Asian man. Like who would she be? She'd probably be doing something different, because I don't know if they let fat Asian men sing at the goth clubs. I don't know. I'm not saying they wouldn't. I'm just saying how much of who we are can be determined by what choices we make, and how much of who we are is ultimately through some predisposition beyond our control. That was just a really weird tangent, but watching this movie a second time.
What do they talk about at the gospel? I remember what happening in songs, but what's like the main convo?
It is Maddie telling Owen about her life and about how she lived in Phoenix and then she moved to New Mexico, and how everything in the Pink Opaque is real and it exists, and it's sort of it becomes kind of and this is why I think it's a fantasy, and it's because sometimes art can be autobiographical, and I think that he's retelling his story. He's sort of reliving that moment when he decided not to go with Maddie when he was a teenager, and Maddie says, "Come with me, I'll show you." She says, "The Pink Opaque is real. This shit's real, motherfucker.
She's been there,
and all this stuff is real. Come with me to a much better movie, and we can actually do something that's enjoyable, and the audience will have fun instead of trying to make them think and feel sad." And Owen says no. As is in really big symbolism, they get to the 50-yard line. I think I'm cutting ahead, and then he decides not to go with her. This is where the theme of burying comes into place, and about burying yourself is after Maddie leaves for the second time, which again is sort of echoing of the first time that Maddie leaves and Owen stays. Same thing happens. Maddie leaves, Owen stays.
Also, like one of the more important plot points is she mentions that they all the characters in the Pink Opaque, and whatever plot lines happen in Nil really happen. And the way the show ends is Mr. Melancholy kidnaps one of them. He puts the visual symbolism for Owen, which in the show is a goal, but in this fake world, he's a boy.
Right, and we're gonna kind of go a little forward. We're gonna kind of do a little fast. So, boy, I didn't think we'd have enough stuff. Turns out we got a little too much. That's good, but Owen doesn't go with Maddie. He gets a recording of the last episode for the Pink Opaque from Maddie, still on VHS. Something anachronistic that wouldn't have happened at that time. She would have put it on a DVD, or he would have just watched it on Mega Upload, because this takes place in the early 2000s.
But VHS was authentic. Also, it was like the memory, as you say.
And it's the memory, and so it's not real. It's him remembering what happened. And in the last episode, the character that Owen most relates to, one of the female characters, I can't remember her name. I think it was Glip Glorp. He relates to one of the female characters. She gets buried by the villain of the Pink Opaque, who's Mr. Moon, who kind of looks like the moon from the old McDonald's. When McDonald's had would be open till midnight, and that was a big deal.
And more importantly,
it was like there was a McDonald's moon. Look it up, but whatever. But anyway, the bad guy of the movie, or the bad guy of the Pink Opaque, poisons, and he buries her, just as Owen, and again the last episode is a reflection of Owen,
also symbolically,
who buries himself, his true self, into away from everybody, and he remains Owen when really he is a woman, or the Pink Opaque.
Mr. Melancholy holds a snow globe. It shows the child actor for
it shows
Owen.
Him
visually showing this world,
and it kind of contrasts the first time you see that scene, which is kind of like slow, but it's kind of like childlike and friendly, and then you see it again, and then you realize that it's actually a dome of doom. And so the second time you see it, when it's in the glow being held by this evil looking creature, good effects, by the way, effects on the moon, so it looks really creepy. It has this more sinister feeling of essentially him as a little boy inside that dome. It probably represents his true self, and how he can never escape the dome. And the dome comes back into play later, when this is where the movie really gets tedious, for better or worse.
You can also my cracked egg symbolism, the snow globe. And again,
the globe
glass.
is an egg, yeah.
He'll never crack it.
Yeah, so Owen meets with Maddie. Maddie has some long monologue, again, tying back to the themes of being buried. Except in Maddie's story, she gets buried by a burnout who she pays because she wants to bury her true self, like how Owen did. But she talks about it, and she rises from the grave. And this is a great example of show don't tell, because it comes off like bad community theater when Maddie is giving her monologue. She's like, "I lived in Georgia. Oh, let me tell you about the whistling trees," or some bullshit like that. And it's just long recollection of her saying, like, I paid some guy to bury me alive.
And then she regretted it.
And I regretted it, and I rose from the dirt as myself, as a lesbian. I rose from the ashes and became a lesbian. And then that scene just kind of ends. And then it's like, at this point, you're exhausted. And then at first I thought this was done as... So in the movie, Owen becomes old. And he has like a family, and he remains a straight man.
Also, funny fact, you don't see his family. Ever.
You don't see his family, even though deep down he's trans. He stays Owen, and we cut to him working at his job. I don't know how this guy's paying for a house, but he works at like a Chuck E. Cheese place. He works at like a pizza place after the movie theater place closes down.
At this point in the movies, the pretense of it being real is gone.
He is wearing the worst old man makeup of all time. And the first time I saw it, I thought, wow, that's really bad. What a stupid blunder to make. How, like, it was just bad on a technical level. But if you look at it in terms of him remembering his life, you realize that you wouldn't really probably remember yourself old. You would remember yourself old, but...
Part of you always sees yourself as young.
At its core, exactly. You think of yourself as that young person. So... You know,
wow, symbolically it works out.
It does, and that's why I'm saying. Oh, I forgot to mention this about continuity errors. When Maddie is in the bar, her hair is like cut really short and thin, kind of like one of the characters in the Pink Opaque show. But when she walks out of the bar, she has more of like a 90s kind of. She has a different hairstyle. So not only are her clothes changing, but her hair's changing. So again, that ties to unreliable memory.
Also, I had to imagine, like, because he said, like, she probably left the movie halfway through. This is almost like him, his inner, like, gain is trying to scream out, please do something.
So the movie ends with him having a mental breakdown at work while they're singing Happy Birthday. And then again, we go into this community theater type of gimmick where everybody pretends to stand still, but you can still see Connor O'Malley. Because Connor O'Malley still works with him, I guess. Like, even though he makes fun of him, he, like, hired him at the Chuck E. Cheese place. So they both work at the Chuck E. Cheese place. They're probably fucking. But Owen, when the Happy Birthday is being sang, has like a mental breakdown, and all the kids and all the parents and all the workers, they all stand still, but it's clearly like you can still see them breathe and like shift. So it looks stupid. Yeah.
Before that, you see a kid in the money grabbing machine, which often looks coffin shaped, like the hole in the ground he's buried in, and in the text above it says, "You are dying."
Yeah.
It's mocking him at this point
because
he's so close to
death. Not only
death.
mocking him, but it's warning him. It's saying like your true self needs to come out, which does happen in the end. After his mental breakdown, he locks himself in the restroom. Connor O'Malley was like, "What's going on, dude? You want to get your dick sucked?"
Oh, okay. The ending scene is that he goes to the bathroom and he gets a box cuddle. Would he get a box cuddle? Who knows? And he starts cutting his chest open.
He cuts himself open.
And you see...
And then I think that it cuts to the next scene, because we got to rush through this.
But let me explain it. Yeah. You see a TV glowing, which yet again is the cracked egg. His egg never cracked. He never fully opened.
Yeah, challenging the boundary between television, the border between television and fantasy and reality. What we imagine and what is real. Breaking those barriers. Kind of playing with those dualities.
And it ends with him going, "I'm sorry."
Well, hold on. We forgot to mention the scene where he's watching the Pink Opaque, and then he literally, and this also what ties into the barrier. So I believe it's after the Connor O'Malley scene, or it might have been before. I don't know. This is kind of a dull movie.
His dad dies too.
You're right, but who cares? He's watching the Pink Opaque episode, and
on the streaming site,
his dad catches him with his head in the TV, and his dad rips him out, and then his dad forces him. He begins to cry and scream and say, like, "I don't belong here. I don't belong here. You don't understand, man." And then he throws up, like, it looks like the static from, like, television, which, again, his head inside the television, the egg idea, cracking through, breaking through these boundaries and everything. And, yeah, again, we're going back to memory. When he thinks back and remembers the show as a kid, he remembers it as a kid does, which is scary. And when he remembers watching the show as an older man, he remembers it the way an older man remembers it. I mean, or an older person, because he is technically still trans, but at this point he hasn't transitioned yet. He's still Owen. So, but when he rewatches the show, so one of the last scenes is he rewatches the show on streaming and he realizes that it's very childish. The actors who were in it, they no longer look older. They look like children, and the effects aren't scary to him. And I still think that that's an over-exaggeration. I think that's him remembering it, again, as an older person as opposed to as actually... I believe the real show is something in between what as he remembers it as a child and as he remembers it as an older person. And then the show ends with him leaving work and apologizing, but nobody hearing him. And that's pretty much it. It got a little confusing at the end. Even I think the way we narrated it was pretty bad, but this doesn't really have like a concrete narrative.
Describing this movie scene by scene and overarching plot is
Right.
very hard. It's innately tied to
Right.
theme and symbolism.
So let's go ahead. Let's get your final impressions. What did you think of it at the end? Now that we know everything, any final? What are your final thoughts?
Honestly, I have to admit, you made me like the movie more to go into some of the parts about nostalgia and memory. Because I didn't really pick up on that the first time. But hearing you describe it, the fact that different outfits change, but that's purposeful because his memory doesn't quite remember it. It's fluid. Memory is like that. It's a movie I really love. I want to love more than I do, to be honest. I didn't cry. I heard some people say, oh my God, I cried my eyes out. And I understand if it really connected with you, but I just wish the main character would have made the call to action. I get the symbolism of him not, but as an audience member and as like a fellow like gay person, I want to be like, yeah, just be gay, fight the crime. But I'll recommend it. If you have time, it's slow. You have to be ready for some nice dialogue scenes. It's not going to be
This.
It's not going to be like one of those weird A24 movies where every scene is nuts. No, it's a dialogue-heavy movie that you might like.
This movie was not my cup of tea. It was kind of boring. Some of the scenes at the end really drag. And the actual show within the movie, the Pink Opaque, is way better.
Oh, that's like the scene
I
of the
would
movie.
have rather, maybe in truth, tying with everything about reality and fiction, I would have done what Maddie did, and maybe that's what you're supposed to do in the movie. I would have done what Maddie did, and I would have lived in the Pink Opaque, which is where she goes, because that is a much better place to live than in I Saw the TV Glow. Turn the Pink Opaque into an actual psychedelic kind of fucked up Adult Swim type of show, and I will watch it. Fuck I Saw the TV Glow. Make the Pink Opaque. Okay?
Do it, you cowards.
Do it, because I think that's honestly a great idea for a show. The movie has really deep, complex themes. Is it well made? Yes.
Oh, another visual.
Is it good? I don't know. Is it worth watching? Hell yeah. Watch this movie. Don't watch it for a week. Watch it one more time. And if you want to, but definitely it is an experience. Good or bad, doesn't matter. It'll make you feel something. And that's more than what you're going to get from some of the other crap they make, like that shit movie Abigail, which at some point we should talk about, even though it is old. But we'll maybe do like a double feature with Abigail and something else.
Exactly. Oh my God.
This is Movie Mindset signing off with you guys. I want to say my name is Peter Pasillas, a.k.a. Susan Fonzarelli. Thank you for listening. Anything you want to say?
My name is Casey, and I love the movies.
All right. Bye-bye.
I told myself I made the right choice. What if I really was someone else? Very far away on the other side of a television screen.